Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the exploration ship Horizon's Edge. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of computers. They had been traveling through space for 3 weeks looking for new planets that humans could settle on. Jake liked these quiet moments between star systems. It gave him time to think. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," said Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her station. She was the ship's best scanner operator, and her voice carried a note of concern that made Jake sit up straight. "What kind of strange?" Jake asked, moving to look over her shoulder at the display screen. "It's a ship, sir, but it's not like anything in our database. The design is completely alien." Amy's fingers moved quickly over her controls, bringing up a clearer image on the main screen. Jake stared at the shape floating in space before them. The ship looked almost alive, with smooth curves that reminded him of a sea creature from Earth. It was dark silver in color and about half the size of their own vessel. Most importantly, it was drifting without power. "Any signs of life?" Jake asked. "Scanning now," replied Dr. Lisa Parker from the science station. She was young but brilliant, and Jake trusted her readings completely. "I'm detecting one life form inside, but the readings are unusual. The biosignature doesn't match any known species." Engineer Pete Collins looked up from his repair work on a nearby console. "Could be a first contact situation, Captain. Protocol says we should approach with caution." Jake nodded. Pete was right about protocol, but Jake had always believed that sometimes you had to trust your instincts. Something about the drifting ship made him think whoever was inside needed help badly. "Amy, take us closer, nice and slow. Pete, I want you to scan their hull for any signs of damage or weapons." The Horizon's Edge moved carefully toward the alien vessel. As they got closer, the details became clearer. The ship's surface was covered in strange markings that looked like writing, but in no language any human had ever seen. "Hull shows signs of damage near what looks like the engine section," Pete reported. "No active weapons detected, but there are some energy patterns I don't recognize." "Life signs are getting weaker," Dr. Parker added with concern in her voice. "Whatever's inside that ship won't last much longer." Jake made his decision. "Amy, bring us alongside. Pete, prepare the docking tube. We're going aboard." "Sir, that could be dangerous," said Security Chief Kevin Torres, who had just arrived on the bridge. "We don't know anything about this species." "Which is exactly why we need to help them," Jake replied. "If they die, we might never get another chance to make peaceful contact." "Amy, you're with me." "Pete, I want you to bring your engineering kit." "Dr. Parker, grab your medical scanner." 20 minutes later, Jake found himself floating through the docking tube that connected their ship to the alien vessel. The tube had sealed properly, which meant the alien ship's designers understood the same basic principles of space travel that humans did. The airlock on the alien ship opened with a soft hiss. Jake stepped through first, his hand resting on his sidearm but not drawing it. The inside of the ship was dim, lit only by weak emergency lights that cast strange shadows on the walls. "Air is breathable," Dr. Parker reported, checking her scanner. "Similar mix to Earth normal, but with some trace gases I don't recognize." The corridors were wider than those on human ships, and the walls had the same organic curves as the exterior. Everything felt designed for beings taller than humans. Jake led the way deeper into the ship, following the life sign readings on Dr. Parker's scanner. They found the source in what appeared to be the ship's medical bay. A single pod sat in the center of the room, its transparent cover fogged with condensation. Inside, Jake could see a figure lying motionless. "The life signs are coming from in there," Dr. Parker whispered. "But they're very weak." Pete examined the pod's controls. "I think this is some kind of emergency stasis system. Keeps someone alive when the ship's main power fails." "Can you open it?" Jake asked. "Maybe. Give me a few minutes to figure out their control system." While Pete worked, Jake and Amy explored the rest of the medical bay. The equipment was clearly advanced, but some of it looked familiar enough that Dr. Parker could guess its purpose. "Got it," Pete announced. The pod made a soft clicking sound and the cover began to slide open with a quiet hiss. Jake moved closer as the fog cleared. The being inside was definitely not human, but it was close enough to be disturbing. She was tall and thin, with pale silver skin that seemed to glow slightly in the dim light. Her hair was long and white, and when Jake looked at her face, he could see that her canine teeth were much longer and sharper than a human's. "She looks almost human," Amy whispered. "But not quite," Dr. Parker added, running her scanner over the unconscious alien. "Her bone structure is different and her muscle density is much higher than ours. She's probably much stronger than she looks. Suddenly, the alien's eyes snapped open. They were a deep purple color that seemed to shift and change as Jake watched. She sat up smoothly, too smoothly for someone who had been unconscious moments before. Jake stepped back but kept his hands visible and non-threatening. "We're here to help," he said clearly. "Do you understand us?" The alien looked at each of them in turn, her purple eyes studying their faces. When she spoke, her voice was clear and musical, but with an edge that reminded Jake of a predator. "I understand you perfectly," she said in flawless English. "Your transmissions have been quite educational during my long sleep." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. How long had this being been listening to human communications? The alien stood up gracefully, and Jake could see that she was indeed much taller than any of them. She moved with a fluid grace that made it clear she was dangerous, even if she wasn't acting hostile. "I am Zara Vex of the Sanguine Collective," she said, looking directly at Jake. "I assume you are the captain of the vessel that found me." "Captain Jake Morrison," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "This is Lieutenant Rodriguez, Engineer Collins, and Dr. Parker." Zara nodded to each of them in turn. "I owe you my life, Captain Morrison. My ship was sabotaged, and I have been in emergency stasis for many months." "Sabotaged?" Amy asked. "By who?" Zara's expression darkened, and when she smiled, Jake could see just how sharp those teeth really were. "By someone I trusted completely," she said. "Someone who left me to die while he escaped to continue his crimes." She looked at Jake with those unsettling purple eyes. "I'm hunting the one who betrayed me, Captain Morrison, and I will need your help to find him." Jake led Zara through the corridors of the Horizon's Edge toward the conference room. The alien woman moved with such fluid grace that she seemed to glide rather than walk. Her presence made the crew members they passed stop and stare, though they tried to be subtle about it. "Your ship is well designed," Zara commented as they walked. "Efficient use of space, practical layout. Very human." "You say that like you know humans well," Dr. Parker observed from behind them. "I have studied your species through your transmissions," Zara replied. "Music, news broadcasts, entertainment programs. Quite fascinating how much you reveal about yourselves without realizing it." They reached the conference room and Jake gestured for everyone to sit. Zara chose a chair that let her see all the exits. Another detail that didn't escape Jake's notice. "Before we talk about helping you," Jake said carefully, "I need to know more about who you are and what kind of help you need." Zara leaned back in her chair, studying each of their faces. "A reasonable request, Captain. What would you like to know about the Cathera?" "Let's start with the basics," Dr. Parker said, pulling out her data pad. "Your biology, your culture, where you come from." "My people are what you might call energy feeders," Zara began. "We sustain ourselves by drawing life energy from other beings. Not their blood, as some of your vampire stories suggest, but the bioelectrical energy that powers all living things." Amy shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "That sounds like you kill to eat." "Not necessarily," Zara said with a slight smile that showed her sharp teeth. "When done properly, the feeding takes only a small amount of energy. The donor recovers quickly and suffers no permanent harm. It is actually similar to how some of your symbiotic organisms work." Pete frowned. "But that's not how everyone does it?" Zara's expression grew darker. "No. Some of my people believe we should feed without restraint, draining our prey completely. They see our feeding codes as weakness." She stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. "I was part of an elite unit called the Sanguine Collective. We hunted down those who violated our feeding laws and brought them to justice." "Like police," Amy said. "More like hunters," Zara corrected. "Rogue Cathera are extremely dangerous. They become addicted to the rush of completely draining their victims. They grow stronger with each kill, but also more unstable." Dr. Parker looked up from her notes. "You said someone betrayed you. Was it another hunter?" Zara turned back to face them, and Jake could see real pain in her purple eyes. "His name is Drakmor. We worked together for over 2 centuries. He was my partner, my closest ally, and I thought my friend." She returned to her seat, her movements now less graceful and more tired. "We were tracking a rogue named Voss Caney. He had destroyed 3 primitive worlds, draining entire populations instead of feeding sustainably. It was our job to stop him." "What happened?" Jake asked. "We cornered Caney on a barren moon in the Zirian system. Drakmor and I had planned the operation perfectly. We knew Kaney's weaknesses, his preferred tactics.
It should have been simple. Zara's hands clenched into fists.
During the final confrontation, my equipment failed. My energy weapon stopped working, my protective gear shut down. Kaney was able to overpower me easily. Equipment failure happens, Pete said. Space is tough on technology. It wasn't a failure, Zara said quietly. Drakmor had sabotaged everything. As Kaney prepared to drain me completely, Drakmor revealed that he had been working with the criminal all along. The room fell silent. Jake could see the shock on his crew's faces. Why would he do that? Dr. Parker asked. Because he had decided that our feeding codes were wrong, Zara replied. He believed the Cathara should embrace our nature as apex predators. He had been secretly recruiting other hunters who shared his philosophy. Amy leaned forward. So he left you to die? He thought he had killed me, Zara said. The moon had no atmosphere and my life support was damaged. But I managed to reach my ship and activate the emergency stasis system just in time. And Kaney, Jake asked, escaped with Drakmor, along with information about collective operations, hunter techniques, and the locations of our safe houses. Pete whistled low. That's a lot of damage from one traitor. It gets worse, Zara continued. While I was in stasis, I intercepted collective emergency transmissions. Drakmor didn't just disappear. He's been building his own organization, converting more hunters to his cause. She looked directly at Jake. And according to the last transmission I received, he's brought his operation into human space. Jake felt his blood run cold. Human space, why? Because humans are perfect prey for rogue Cathara, Zara said bluntly. You're numerous, spread across multiple worlds, and your technology isn't advanced enough to detect us easily. More importantly, human bioenergy has a unique quality that makes it particularly potent for my people. What kind of quality? Dr. Parker asked. Human emotions generate extremely strong energy patterns, Zara explained. Fear, anger, joy, love, all of these create powerful bioelectrical fields. For a Cathara, feeding on a human is like drinking pure energy. That explains why he came here, Amy said grimly. But what's his plan? Zara was quiet for a long moment, then spoke in a voice that made Jake's skin crawl. Based on his past operations, Drakmor won't just hunt randomly. He'll want to establish sustainable feeding sources, human farms. Farms? Pete asked. Populations of humans kept alive but docile, used for regular energy harvesting. Like cattle, but for life force instead of meat. The implications hit Jake like a physical blow. How many people could he control? A small group of rogue Cathara could dominate an entire colony, Zara said. We're naturally stronger and faster than humans, and we can influence weak minds during feeding. With the right setup, a dozen rogues could control thousands of humans. Dr. Parker looked sick. And you think he's already started? I intercepted distress signals before my ship was found, Zara replied. 3 different human colonies reported attacks by unknown assailants. The descriptions match Cathara feeding patterns, but the scale was much larger than normal. Jake stood up and began pacing. Why are you telling us this? Why not contact your own people? Because Drakmor has been planning this for decades, Zara said. He knows collective procedures, our response protocols, our weaknesses. By the time official hunters arrive, he'll have disappeared again. She looked at each of them in turn, but he doesn't know about humans. He thinks you're just primitive prey animals. He won't expect organized resistance, especially if it comes from an unexpected direction. You want us to help you hunt him, Amy said. I want to train you to hunt him, Zara corrected. Humans have advantages my people don't. You adapt quickly, you think creatively, and you're willing to take risks that more logical species would avoid. Pete laughed, but there was no humor in it. You mean we're crazy enough to fight vampires? Essentially, yes, Zara said with what might have been approval. Drakmor will expect collective hunters who follow established tactics. He won't expect humans who make up new strategies as they go. Jake stopped pacing and looked at his crew. He could see fear in their faces, but also determination. They understood what was at stake. What exactly would you need from us? He asked. Transportation to the affected colonies, assistance in tracking the rogues, and most importantly, help in modifying your weapons to be effective against my people. Dr. Parker looked up from her datapad. You'd teach us how to kill Cathara? I'd teach you how to stop them, Zara corrected. My people can be subdued without killing, but only if you know exactly how to do it. Jake made his decision. We'll help you, but I have conditions. Name them. First, no feeding on my crew without explicit consent. Second, you tell us everything about Kythera abilities and weaknesses. Third, if we encounter innocent Kythera, we try to capture them alive. Zara considered this for a moment, then nodded. Acceptable. But you should know that once we begin this hunt, Drakmor will consider you enemies. He won't show mercy to humans who interfere with his plans. Then we'll just have to make sure we get him first, Jake said grimly. 3 days after finding Zara, the Horizon's Edge received the first distress call. Jake was in his quarters reviewing crew reports when Amy's voice came over the comm system, tight with urgency. Captain to the bridge immediately. We've got multiple emergency signals coming in. Jake ran through the corridors, arriving on the bridge to find his crew clustered around the communications station. Ryan Bell, their communications officer, looked pale as he worked the controls. What's the situation? Jake asked. 3 colonies have sent distress calls in the past hour, Ryan reported. New Dakota, Harmony Station, and the mining operation on Kelvin Prime, all reporting the same thing, attacks by unknown hostiles. Dr. Parker looked up from her analysis screen. The attack patterns are consistent with what Zara described. Multiple casualties, but the bodies show no physical wounds, just complete energy drain. Where's Zara? Jake asked. Engineering bay with Pete, Amy replied. They've been working on weapon modifications since yesterday. Jake activated the ship's comm system. Zara, Pete, get to the bridge now. When Zara arrived, she moved immediately to Ryan's station and studied the incoming signals. Her expression grew darker with each report she read. It's definitely Drakmor's work, she said finally. But the scale is larger than I expected. He's not just testing human defenses anymore. He's making a statement. What kind of statement? Jake asked. That humans are helpless against him, Zara replied. Look at the timing. 3 simultaneous attacks on colonies light years apart. He's showing that he can strike anywhere, anytime. Pete wiped sweat from his forehead. How many rogues would he need for something like this? At least a dozen, Zara said. Possibly more. He's been busy building his army. Jake studied the star chart showing the attacked colonies. These aren't random targets. New Dakota is a major agricultural center, Harmony Station is a trade hub, and Kelvin Prime supplies rare metals to half the outer colonies. Strategic targets, Amy agreed. He's going after infrastructure. Not just infrastructure, Zara corrected. Population centers with specific characteristics. New Dakota has a large rural population spread across multiple settlements. Harmony Station has transient workers who might not be missed immediately. Kelvin Prime has isolated mining teams. Dr. Parker looked sick. He's picking targets where people might disappear without anyone noticing right away. Exactly, Zara said. He needs time to establish his feeding operations before anyone realizes what's happening. Jake made a quick decision. Ryan, send a priority message to Colonial Command. Tell them we're investigating the attacks and we'll report our findings. Amy, plot a course for New Dakota. It's the closest to our current position. Captain, Security Chief Kevin Torres said from his station, maybe we should wait for backup. If these things are as dangerous as our guest says, we might be outmatched. By the time backup arrives, how many more people will be dead? Jake replied, We're the only ship in range that knows what we're dealing with. Zara moved to stand beside Jake's command chair. There's something else you should know about the attacks. The timing suggests Drakmor has been watching human communications and travel patterns. He knows when ships arrive and depart from each colony. He's been planning this for months, Amy realized. Longer, Zara said. Remember, he had access to collective intelligence networks for over 2 centuries. He knows how to gather information and plan long-term operations. The ship's journey to New Dakota took 18 hours. During that time, Zara worked with Pete to finish modifying their weapons and taught the security team about Kythera combat techniques. The most important thing to remember, she told the assembled crew in the cargo bay, is that my people are much faster than humans. In a straight fight, you'll lose every time. She moved to a training dummy Pete had set up. But Kythera have predictable attack patterns. We prefer to get close for feeding, which means we have to come to you. With movements too quick to follow clearly, Zara demonstrated a typical Kythera attack. Her hands went to the dummy's head and neck in positions that would allow energy draining. The modified energy disruptors Pete built will work, but only at close range. She continued, You need to let us get close, then hit us when we're focused on the attack. Sergeant Tony Martinez, the leader of their small marine unit, raised his hand. What about armor? Will our standard gear protect us? Not from energy drain, Zara said, but it will help against physical attacks. My people are strong, but we're not invulnerable to bullets or blades. Dr. Parker had been taking notes throughout the training session. You mentioned that rogues get stronger by feeding. How much stronger? Significantly, Zara admitted. A rogue who has drained multiple victims becomes faster, stronger, and more resistant to our usual methods of capture. Drakmore himself has been feeding without restraint for months. He'll be extremely dangerous. When they arrived at New Dakota, Jake's first view of the colony made his stomach turn. The main settlement looked normal from orbit, but there were no communication signals, no ship traffic, no signs of normal activity. Life signs are strange, Dr. Parker reported as they scanned the planet. I'm reading about 3,000 people in the main settlement, but their biosignatures are very weak. They're being kept alive, Zara said grimly. Drakmore has already established a feeding operation. Jake ordered a small team to go down to the surface. He led the group himself along with Zara, Sergeant Martinez, Dr. Parker, and 4 Marines. They landed outside the settlement and approached on foot. The colony looked like a ghost town. Buildings stood empty. Vehicles sat abandoned in the streets, but there were no bodies anywhere. Where is everyone? One of the Marines whispered. Zara held up a hand for silence, then pointed toward the largest building in the settlement. They're in there. I can sense the energy patterns. They moved carefully through the empty streets. Jake noticed that doors had been left open, personal belongings scattered on the ground, signs that people had been taken quickly from their daily activities. The large building turned out to be a community center. When they reached the entrance, Zara suddenly grabbed Jake's arm. Wait, she whispered. There are 2 Cathara inside. They're feeding right now. Jake signaled for his team to spread out around the building. Through the windows they could see dozens of people sitting motionless in chairs, their eyes vacant and staring. 2 tall figures moved among them, occasionally placing hands on someone's head. On my signal, Jake whispered into his comm. Remember what Zara taught us? Let them get close, then use the disruptors. They entered through multiple doors simultaneously. The 2 rogue Kithra looked up in surprise as armed humans poured into the room. For a moment, everyone froze. Then the rogues moved faster than any human could react. One leaped directly at Jake while the other went for Sergeant Martinez. Jake forced himself to stand still as the Cathara reached for his head. At the last second, he activated the energy disruptor Pete had built into his sidearm. The weapon discharged with a sharp crackling sound, and the rogue screamed as electricity coursed through its body. Across the room, Martinez had done the same thing. Both rogues collapsed, unconscious but alive. Check the colonists, Jake ordered. Dr. Parker moved among the seated people, scanning them with her medical equipment. They're alive but in some kind of trance state. Their energy levels are extremely low. Will they recover? Jake asked. I think so, Dr. Parker replied, but it'll take time and medical treatment. Zara knelt beside one of the unconscious rogues. These are young ones, probably recent converts to Drakmore's cause. They haven't been rogue for very long. How can you tell? Martinez asked. Experienced rogues wouldn't have been caught off guard so easily, Zara explained. Drakmore is using new recruits for the simple work while he handles more important tasks. Jake looked around the room full of drained colonists. If this is simple work, what's he doing that's more important? Before Zara could answer, Ryan's voice crackled through their comms. Captain, we're receiving another distress signal. It's from the mining station on Kelvin Prime, but this one's different. Different how? Jake asked. It's not asking for help with an attack. They're reporting that their entire population has gone missing. 3,000 people vanished without a trace. Jake felt ice in his veins. How long ago? The automated systems show it happened 6 hours ago. Zara stood up, her face grim. Drakmore isn't just establishing feeding stations anymore. He's harvesting entire populations for transport. Transport where? Dr. Parker asked. Somewhere he can set up a permanent operation, Zara replied. Somewhere humans won't find them until it's too late to save them. Jake looked at the rows of drained colonists, then at his small team. They had managed to capture 2 young rogues, but Drakmore was operating on a scale far beyond what they could handle alone. We need more help, he said finally, and we need to find out where he's taking those people. I have an idea about that, Zara said, but you're not going to like it. Jake stared at Zara as she stood over the unconscious rogue Kithara. What idea? I need to feed from one of them, Zara said quietly. Not enough to cause permanent damage, but enough to access their recent memories. Dr. Parker looked alarmed. Is that possible? When Kithara feed, we create a temporary mental connection with our prey, Zara explained. If I'm careful, I can access memories from that connection without harming the subject. Sergeant Martinez kept his weapon trained on the unconscious rogues. And you're sure you won't hurt them? I've done it before during investigations, Zara said. It requires precise control, but it's the fastest way to learn where Drakmor has taken the missing colonists. Jake considered the options. They needed information quickly, and traditional interrogation might not work on aliens whose minds function differently than humans. Do it, he decided, but Dr. Parker monitors the subject's vital signs, and if anything goes wrong, we stop immediately. Zara knelt beside the younger-looking of the two rogues. She placed her hands gently on either side of its head, her sharp nails barely touching the silver skin. Her purple eyes began to glow faintly. I'm making contact, she whispered. The connection is forming. Dr. Parker watched her scanner intently. The rogue's brain activity is increasing, but vital signs are stable. For several minutes, Zara remained motionless except for the soft glow of her eyes. Then she gasped and pulled her hands away, stumbling backward. What did you see? Jake asked. New Pittsburgh, Zara said, breathing heavily. Drakmor has established his main base in the abandoned mining complexes beneath the planet's surface. That makes sense, Pete said over the comm from the ship. New Pittsburgh was stripped bare by mining operations 50 years ago. Most of the planet is just empty tunnels now. It's perfect for his purposes, Zara continued. Hidden underground, multiple escape routes, and room to hold thousands of prisoners. Martinez frowned. How many people has he taken? Based on what I saw in the rogue's memories, at least 8,000 from various colonies, Zara replied. He's been operating for weeks before we realized what was happening. Jake felt sick. 8,000 people being slowly drained of life energy in underground tunnels. How many rogues does he have working for him? At least 50, Zara said. And they're all enhanced from unrestricted feeding. Each one is significantly stronger than these two we captured. Dr. Parker looked up from her medical scanner. We can't handle 50 enhanced vampires with our current resources. No, we can't, Jake agreed. Ryan, send an emergency message to Colonial Command. Tell them we need immediate military support at New Pittsburgh. Already done, Captain, Ryan replied. But the nearest fleet units are 3 days away. Those people don't have 3 days, Martinez said grimly. Jake looked around the room full of drained colonists. Some were beginning to stir slightly as their energy levels slowly recovered, but they were still helpless. We go in alone, he decided. Small team, hit fast, try to disrupt their operation until help arrives. That's suicide, Dr. Parker protested. You said yourself we can't handle 50 enhanced rogues. We don't have to fight all of them, Zara said thoughtfully. The rogues' memories showed me the layout of their base. Most of the rogues are busy maintaining the feeding operation. Only a few are stationed as guards. She moved to Pete's portable computer and began sketching a rough map. The main holding area is here, deep underground. But there's a central power station that controls the energy-dampening fields, keeping the prisoners docile. If we could shut down the power, Jake realized, the prisoners might be able to help themselves. Some of them, Zara agreed. The ones who haven't been drained too severely. But shutting down the power would also alert Drakmor to our presence. Pete studied the map. What about a diversion? If we could draw most of the rogues away from the main base, or how? Martinez asked. Explosion on the surface, Pete suggested. Big enough to make them think we're attacking from above while we sneak in through one of the old mining tunnels. Zara shook her head. Drakmor knows collective tactics too well. He'd see through a simple diversion. But he doesn't know human tactics, Jake said slowly. An idea was forming in his mind. What if we gave him exactly what he expects to see? I don't follow, Dr. Parker said. Zara, what would a normal collective response look like? Jake asked. Single ship, small team of hunters, direct assault on the main entrance, Zara replied. Standard procedure for rogue operations. Right, so we give him that, but with a twist. Jake moved to the map. Zara approaches openly like a collective hunter following standard protocol. Drakmor will want to face her personally. It's a matter of honor among your people. That would draw him away from the prisoners, Zara said, understanding dawning in her voice. While you keep him busy, the rest of us infiltrate through the mining tunnels and shut down the power, Jake continued. Once the prisoners are free, we'll have thousands of angry humans helping us fight. Martinez grinned. I like it. But what happens when Drakmor realizes it's a trap? By then it'll be too late, Jake said. The prisoners will be free and colonial forces will be on their way. Zara was quiet for a long moment. There's something else you should know about Drakmor. The rogue's memories showed that he's enhanced himself far beyond normal limits. He's drained dozens of victims personally. How much stronger does that make him? Dr. Parker asked. Strong enough to tear apart a normal Cathara without effort, Zara admitted. I can't beat him in a straight fight. You don't have to beat him, Jake said. Just keep him distracted long enough for us to complete our mission. And if I can't? Jake met her purple eyes steadily. Then you do whatever it takes to stop him from escaping. Even if it means sacrificing yourself, Zara smiled, showing her sharp teeth. You think like a hunter, Captain Morrison. Very well. I'll face Drakmor. They spent the next several hours planning the assault. Pete modified their remaining energy disruptors for maximum effectiveness, while Martinez briefed the Marines on tunnel fighting techniques. Dr. Parker prepared medical supplies for treating the rescued prisoners. The journey to New Pittsburgh took 12 hours. During the trip, Zara taught Jake and his team everything she could about Cathara combat abilities and weaknesses. Remember that enhanced rogues can influence weak minds during combat, she warned. Don't look directly into their eyes during a fight, and don't listen to anything they say. What kind of mental influence? Martinez asked. Fear, confusion, false memories, Zara replied. Drakmor is particularly skilled at making his enemies see things that aren't there. When they arrived at New Pittsburgh, the planet looked even more desolate than Jake remembered from the survey reports. The surface was scarred with massive mining excavations, and the atmosphere had a brown tint from decades of industrial pollution. Life signs are concentrated in the northern mining complex, Dr. Parker reported. Thousands of humans, all showing the same low energy patterns we saw in New Dakota. And the Cathara? Jake asked. Harder to detect, but I count at least 40 distinct energy signatures, she replied. They're spread throughout the tunnel system. Jake turned to Zara. Are you ready for this? I've been ready for months, she replied. Drakmor destroyed everything I believed in when he betrayed the collective. It's time to make him pay for that. Jake watched as Zara's ship separated from the horizon's edge and headed toward the main entrance of the mining complex. According to their plan, she would announce herself as a collective hunter and demand that Drakmor surrender. Meanwhile, Jake led his team down through a forgotten mining shaft on the far side of the complex. The tunnels were dark and filled with the smell of old machinery and stale air. Power station should be about 2 kilometers ahead, Pete whispered, consulting his scanner. They moved carefully through the tunnels, using night vision equipment to navigate the darkness. The deeper they went, the more Jake could feel the weight of the mountain above them. Then they heard the sound of energy weapons firing in the distance. Zara's made contact, Martinez observed. Let's hope she can keep Drakmor busy long enough, Jake replied. They reached the power station to find it guarded by 3 rogue Cathara. The rogues were focused on the sounds of battle echoing through the tunnels, giving Jake's team the element of surprise. The fight was brief, but intense. The Marines used their modified weapons effectively, and within minutes all 3 guards were down. Pete rushed to the power controls while Jake and Martinez watched for reinforcements. These systems are old but functional, Pete reported. Give me 2 minutes to figure out the shutdown sequence. You've got 1 minute, Jake said as the sound of running footsteps echoed from the main tunnel. Company's coming. Pete's fingers flew over the controls. Just as the first rogue Cathara appeared at the tunnel entrance, the power station's lights went out and a deep humming sound stopped. In the sudden darkness, Jake heard something that made his heart race with hope. The sound of thousands of human voices shouting in anger and confusion as they awakened from their forced docility. The darkness in the power station lasted only seconds before emergency lighting activated, casting everything in a red glow. Jake could hear chaos erupting throughout the tunnel complex as thousands of human prisoners suddenly awakened from their forced trance. Power's down, Pete reported. All the energy dampening fields are offline. Through his comm unit, Jake could hear Ryan's voice from the ship above. "Captain, I'm picking up massive movement in the tunnel complex. It looks like the prisoners are fighting back." 3 rogue Kithra rushed into the power station, but they seemed confused and disoriented. Jake realized that the sudden awakening of so many human minds was overwhelming their psychic senses. Sergeant Martinez and his Marines opened fire with their modified weapons. The energy disruptors crackled as they struck the rogues, dropping 2 of them immediately. The third managed to reach Martinez before collapsing. "Tony," Jake called as the Marine fell. "I'm okay," Martinez gasped, struggling to his feet. Thing was weak. Nothing like what Zara described. Dr. Parker scanned the area with her medical equipment. "The rogues' energy levels are dropping fast. I think the mass awakening of the prisoners is draining them somehow." Jake activated his comm. "Zara, can you hear me?" "The power's down and the prisoners are awake." For a moment there was only static. Then Zara's voice came through, strained with effort. "Good work, Captain. But Drakmor is stronger than I expected. I can't hold him much longer. Where are you?" Jake asked. "Main chamber, level 7. He's trying to reach an escape tunnel." Jake looked at his small team. They had accomplished their primary mission. But if Drakmor escaped, he would just set up another operation somewhere else. "Pete, Martinez, get topside and coordinate with the awakened prisoners," Jake ordered. "Dr. Parker, you're with me. We're going after Drakmor." "Sir, that's not wise," Martinez protested. "You heard what Zara said about how dangerous he is." "Which is exactly why we can't let him get away," Jake replied. Jake and Dr. Parker made their way deeper into the tunnel complex, following the sounds of combat. Around them, they could see groups of weak but angry humans organizing themselves, picking up tools and makeshift weapons. One group of miners approached them. "You the rescue team?" Their leader asked. "Part of it," Jake replied. "There's a colonial fleet on the way, but we need to stop the leader of these things before he escapes." "We'll help," the miner said. "These creatures have been draining us for weeks. We want payback. Stay back," Jake warned. "The leader is extremely dangerous. Just focus on rounding up the other rogues." Jake and Dr. Parker reached level 7 to find a scene of destruction. Scorch marks covered the walls from energy weapon fire, and chunks of rock had been torn from the ceiling. In the center of the chamber, Zara and Drakmor circled each other like predators. Drakmor was bigger than Zara, with pale skin that seemed to glow with absorbed energy. His eyes burned with a fierce red light, and when he smiled, his teeth looked more like fangs than anything human. "The little humans who think they can hunt the hunters," Drakmor said without taking his eyes off Zara. His voice carried an accent that hurt to listen to. "How amusing." "Ignore him," Zara called to Jake. "Don't let him get into your mind." Drakmor laughed. "Your human pets think they're clever, Zara, but they have no idea what they're truly facing." He moved faster than Jake could follow, striking at Zara with clawed hands. She barely managed to dodge, rolling away and firing her energy weapon. The blast hit Drakmor in the shoulder but barely slowed him down. "The feeding has made me stronger than any collective hunter," Drakmor boasted, strong enough to drain entire worlds. Jake realized that a direct fight was hopeless. Drakmor was too fast and too strong for normal tactics. But Jake remembered something from his military training about fighting superior opponents. "Dr. Parker, can you scan the tunnel structure around us?" he whispered. She quietly activated her equipment. "The ceiling is supported by old mining beams. They're already stressed from the tunnel excavation." Jake smiled grimly. Sometimes the best way to defeat a superior enemy was to change the rules of engagement. He activated his comm to broadcast on all frequencies. "All teams, this is Captain Morrison. I need everyone to evacuate level 7 immediately. Emergency protocol." Drakmor paused in his attack on Zara. "What are you planning, human?" Instead of answering, Jake pulled out his sidearm and aimed it at the largest support beam visible in the chamber. "Zara, get out of here now." "Jake, no!" Zara shouted, understanding his plan. "The whole section will collapse." "That's the idea," Jake replied and opened fire. His modified energy weapon discharged repeatedly into the support beam. The old metal began to glow and buckle under the energy assault. Drakmor realized what was happening and rushed toward Jake, but Dr. Parker had anticipated this. She triggered her own weapon, not at Drakmor, but at a second support beam. The combined damage to the tunnel structure was too much for the ancient mining supports to handle. With a grinding roar, the ceiling began to collapse. Drakmor leaped toward the escape tunnel, but tons of rock and metal came crashing down faster than even his enhanced speed could carry him. Jake grabbed Dr. Parker and dove for cover behind a mining cart as the chamber filled with dust and debris. When the noise stopped, Jake cautiously looked up. Half the chamber had been buried under collapsed rock. There was no sign of Drakmor anywhere. Is he dead? Dr. Parker asked, coughing from the dust. Zara approached the pile of rubble, her purple eyes glowing as she scanned for energy signatures. I can't detect him. Either he's dead, or buried too deeply for my senses to reach. Will he be able to dig himself out? Jake asked. Not without help, Zara replied. And with his followers either captured or scattered, that help won't be coming. Jake activated his comm. All teams report status. Over the next few minutes, reports came in from throughout the tunnel complex. The awakened prisoners had successfully captured or driven off most of the remaining rogues. A few had escaped to the surface, but they were being hunted down by arriving colonial forces. Casualties? Jake asked. Surprisingly light, Martinez reported. The rogues were so weakened by the mass awakening that most couldn't put up much of a fight. Dr. Parker was scanning the rescued prisoners with her medical equipment. Energy levels are low but stable. With proper medical care, they should make full recoveries. 3 hours later, Jake stood on the surface of New Pittsburgh watching as colonial medical ships landed to evacuate the rescued prisoners. The operation had been a complete success, but the cost had been enormous. 8,000 people, Dr. Parker said quietly. Imagine if we'd been a few days later. We weren't, Jake replied. That's what matters. Zara approached them carrying a data pad. The colonial investigators found Drakmor's records in the main chamber. He was planning to expand operations to 12 more worlds. Planning, Jake asked. His operation is finished, Zara said with satisfaction. Without his leadership and resources, the remaining rogues will scatter. They'll be much easier for collective hunters to track down individually. Jake looked at her carefully. What happens now? Do you return to your people? I must report Drakmor's death and the location of his remaining followers, Zara replied. But I've also learned something important during our time together. What's that? Humans have potential as allies that my people never realized, she said. Your ability to adapt and innovate under pressure is remarkable. The collective should know about this. Dr. Parker smiled. Are you saying we passed some kind of test? I'm saying you exceeded all expectations, Zara replied. Drakmor was defeated not by superior strength or technology, but by human creativity and willingness to take calculated risks. Jake extended his hand to Zara. Will we see you again? She took his hand in her cold grip. Perhaps. The universe is vast, Captain Morrison, and there are other threats out there besides rogue Kithra, threats that might require the combined efforts of both our species. What kind of threats? Jake asked. Zara's smile showed her sharp teeth. Let's just say that there are worse things than vampires in the darkness between stars. As her ship prepared to depart, Zara transmitted the technical specifications for all the weapon modifications they had developed, along with detailed information about Kithara biology and psychology. Consider it a gift from the Sanguine Collective, she said over the comm. You've earned the right to defend yourselves. Jake watched her ship disappear into hyperspace, then turned to his crew. Well, people, I think we just made humanity's first alien ally. Think there will be others? Amy asked. Jake looked up at the stars, thinking about Zara's final warning about other threats in the darkness. I hope so. Something tells me we're going to need all the friends we can get. 6 months later, Jake received a message from Colonial Command. 3 more species had made contact with humanity, drawn by reports of the successful cooperation between humans and the Kithara. Each offered trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. The message concluded with a note that made Jake smile. Captain Morrison, it appears your unconventional first contact protocols have opened more doors than anyone expected. Congratulations on humanity's entrance into galactic society. Jake leaned back in his command chair as the Horizon's Edge continued its exploration mission. They had started the voyage looking for new,